All right. So now that Jeremy has made a quiz, one thing that we wanted to showcase is something that operates outside of Google Forms, but is in line with what you're going to be trying to do with your students when you're having them complete a quiz. There is an add-on that can be put into Google Forms that is called Extended Forms, and you can find that in our Google Workspace Marketplace. So this is the one that you're looking for. It's Timer for Google Forms. It's called Extended Forms. And what this is going to allow you to do is time your quizzes. So it's going to keep everything the same, the way that your form looks, but it's going to put a timer at the top and change. And the screen will change, but you'll still see the form, and the format for the most part is going to stay the same. So let's say that you have a quiz like this. That Jeremy has already put in the questions and the answers. What we're going to do is, because I've already got that installed, is if I click on my puzzle piece for the add-ons, that's going to go into this list, and I'm going to choose Timer for Google Forms Extended Forms. If I click on that, it's going to allow me to configure what does that timer look like. So I'll click Configure, and then once I do that, this little box on the right is going to pop up. And this is going to be where my setup happens. So when I have a form, I'm going to toggle this button on to connect to Extended Forms. And then what it's going to do is, you'll notice it inserts this little section here. So you don't want to edit this. You don't want to just leave this alone. Also inform your students to leave that alone as well. Um, and then what you can do is, from here, we're going to put in the time limit and whether or not we want to restrict attempts. All of that is going to be dependent upon how you set up your quiz, how many questions you have, how if you do want them to be able to do multiple attempts on it. That's all up to you. Those are all preference things. The one thing that is likely that you're going to want to leave on is the third option, which is the auto submit, particularly if you're having where, let's say you're doing like a 10 question vocab quiz, and you want to set it for, let's say you want to set it for 15 minutes. You're going to have the attempts be at one. What you want to do or consider is, if you're only going to allow that one attempt and you have a strict time limit on this, you're going to want the auto submit on, which is on by default. So that's good. But you're going to want that on so that when the timer runs out, if you have a student that was only able to get to 12 of the 5 or 10 questions, so if they got to the 8 of the 10 questions, it's going to submit what they had complete. And so it's not going to just, erase all of their progress. It's going to keep it there. So typically, you're going to have where you're to share the form. You're going to want the email required. You should be able to, because if you're already signed in, if your students are in with like a Google address, they're going to be able to sign in with that directly, and so you shouldn't run into any issues there. The anonymous, you're not going to really want, because you do want to know, what students are submitting what, and so that's going to allow you to do that. So we're going to choose a link, email required. And we did our time limit at 15 minutes. We did one restricted attempt. Um, and then once we have that, there's a couple things that we can do with this. The first is, depending upon how you want to deliver this, um, you can get this to your students with the share link. What we thought would be good is to click on and copy that link. And then if we go into, say, our Google Classroom, let's say we have a Google Classroom that we are going to be putting this in, we can go to our classwork page and click Create, do Assignment, and then we'll call this our Mountains quiz, because that's what Jeremy had set us up with. And then in the link portion of this, I can paste that link to that form. Okay, and then I can just assign that. So now when students go to my Google Classroom, they can click on the mountains quiz, click on enhance Google Forms, and then they'll go ahead and sign in with Google there and then access the form. But just to go back for a second, what we want to do is we want to see what does this look like when a student has it. So if I click on preview, and let me just save this real quick. If I click on preview, it's going to show me what this looks like. So when a student gets in, this is going to be what they see initially. Okay. There are a couple things here as disclaimers for the person that's getting started. One of them is the time limit that's up in the right hand corner. So that's always important to point out how much time do you have. And then you have down here a warning once the test is started, you will not be able to reattempt it. Okay, now back in our setup, depending on what you put here for this, right, you're going to either allow that or not, and so that warning may not apply. Um, and then it just says who's it conducted by down there. The name will show up here, and then you have the student click get started, and then you'll notice that my entire form is in there, still looks exactly the same, but it added this bar at the top that is the extended forms add-on, and there's my timer counting down and giving me my time limit for my Google form. Okay, so this is where the students, this is exactly what they'll see. They'll get their timer, they'll do their questions, they'll hit submit. And then what's cool about this too is that when you get into when the form is done, as the teacher, you can click on the responses. And we're not going to go real in depth into this, but this is something that is really interesting for you to take a look at. Is you click responses and it's going to bring you to the extended forms dashboard for your account. And here's where you're going to have your different forms that you've done and what your responses and things like that. So this is kind of like, think of it as your library for all of the forms that you've created. Okay, you can see one couple have been made here. And you can play around with this a little bit, and there may be some other things that you could find that would be to your benefit, but just for initial setup sake, download the add-on real quick to put in your restrictions here, and then to share out that link and have your students complete their quiz with the time.